Hello, and welcome to the third podcast episode for the Voices for Inclusive Activity Research Project, which is exploring more accessible and inclusive ways of evaluating disability sport and physical activity. My name is Vanessa, and I'm joined by co-researchers Fiona, Tom, and Bev. Hello. Please listen back to episode 1 if you'd like more information about who we all are. Just before we get started, please note that this recording is available as an audio podcast, a video via YouTube, including subtitles, and as a written transcript. So, in this episode, we will be talking about how we've worked together to co-produce our research. So we're going to look at some of the pros, some of the cons, or maybe more challenges, and also any problems that we encountered and how they were resolved. I'm actually going to kick it off, and there will be food, just to pre-warn you. I'm going to talk about, I guess, the lack of certainty of the whole project and kind of understanding where it is actually going. Because I think for all of us, it was a really new experience. It was a new approach, and we were kind of feeling our way as we were going along. I came up with a food analogy, as always, and I described it as it's like making a cake. So it was like making a cake, opening a cupboard and having loads of different ingredients. And as we've gone along, we've had to work out which ingredients we need. We've had to work out how much of those ingredients we need. We've had to work out what order the ingredients need to go in to come out with the best cake. What temperature to set the oven at, when did we need to start the oven, when did we need to put the cake in the oven, do we line the cake tin? There's a lot of cake stuff going on here, but that's the kind of how our project was. That's how it came across. It was definitely an interesting recipe that we were coming up with, including the title of the recipe. I remember that was definitely an interesting experience, trying to work out what exactly is our research question going to be. So I guess as a pro, we could figure out which way we were going to go, but at the same time, as a con or a challenge, we also found it was a little bit challenging for people who maybe needed the project defined from day one. So that was one thing that I know I came up with. I'm going to chuck it out to, who am I going to chuck it out to? I'm going to chuck it out to Fiona. How about you?
Thanks, Nessa. That was a really good analogy and a good introduction to the challenges within our project. I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges we found negotiating the logistics over Zoom. So initially we found it quite difficult to engage virtually over Zoom, finding a date and time when everyone was available to take part in these meetings together. And we also needed quite a lot of perseverance, as at the start, it was difficult to see the end goal or to visualize what we were actually trying to achieve. But as we've gone through this journey, we've realized that all those bumps in the road were part of the process. And so I believe that it's made our outcome much stronger. It was quite a challenge as well to build up those relationships that you'd usually get from talking face to face. So because you didn't have sort of the social cues and the nuances that you would do in person, it was quite hard to sort of have that belief in what others were saying. I suppose your trust was tested in ways, and you kind of just had to have that belief that what somebody was saying was their opinion and not sort of a personal thing at all. But it was a really good thing to approach the challenges in that way, as it definitely made the outcome much better.
Tom, how about you?
Yeah, I think carrying on around the Zoom point, when working in a group, sometimes you get more dominant voices. When that's happening over Zoom particularly, I think it's harder to manage that. It's harder to kind of intervene or say, maybe now it's time to let someone else have a turn. But I think that was one of the challenges going on. Maybe if there is maybe someone who's more confident talking and putting their views across, maybe that causes a bit of uncertainty amongst the group, whether we should just be listening to this person whereas those may be less confident but have got just as good views don't get the opportunity to contribute as much. So I think that's one of the challenges in this kind of project. I think another one that I find myself around working in a group is around diminished responsibility. So if you're in a group, perhaps you feel I don't need to do as much as myself. I don't need to contribute as much because someone else will make that contributions. So perhaps each individual isn't giving as much to the project as they could. I think we overcame that quite nicely in terms of how we broke it down, going into two smaller groups. I think the smaller the groups, there is that diminished responsibility and people feel more need to contribute. But I think that is something that's definitely worth considering within co-production, perhaps how you can make sure that everyone gets their voice across with those two particular challenges that I've just mentioned.
Bev, how about you?
Yeah, I think some people found it challenging to get used to some of the systems we had to use. So for the university, in terms of kind of where data was stored, we had to keep everything together in a particular type of folder that everybody was able to access with a kind of password protected link. But some people found it difficult to kind of get used to that new way of working to ensure we could share things together and knowing when things had been updated, where everything was being saved and things like that. And I know not everybody had the same kind of computer systems and requirements. So we had to kind of look at what kind of access everybody had, whether people had printers and access to ink and data and things like that. So that was a bit of a challenge working virtually.
Oh, thank you, Bev. To round off that section, I'm going to mention something around anxiety. And I guess it's more anxiety around, preconceptions that maybe people had before the project and what was brought to the group, as well as previous experiences of group work. So whether it's kind of, with university, whether it's through work, whether it's through different projects, what did people experience before? And again, did that influence maybe how they came into the group, or they were expecting from the group or not expecting from the group? That was something that we kind of discussed, but at the same time, the process under which we took allowed for those preconceptions, to be explored or to be challenged or to be boosted. There was a little bit of everything. So everybody was able to be authentic in how they came into the group and how the group dynamics gelled and worked together going forwards. Were there any other more challenges that anyone wanted to mention? I think it's a shake. Okay, I'm going to go over to talking about the pros or the positives from working in this group. And the first person is going to be Tom.
Thank you, Nessa. Yeah, so I'd say there's definitely lots of positives of this way of working collaboratively. I think a big one that I found was having different people's voices, and particularly with this kind of project, it was looking at people with lived experience. We all got different life experiences, but we've also got different disabilities. To bring those wider range of disabilities into how we were conducting this research, I think was very very good, really, basically, because it just added more credibility to what we're doing and also helped us design it in a more accessible way, so then we could get a more informed research as a result. I think also how we worked as a group, we kind of had a very safe space to work, gave people the opportunity to come and ask questions. There may be some uncertainty, but having a group where you could kind of bounce those ideas off people worked really well. Whereas if you were working individually, perhaps you wouldn't have got those answers that we were looking for. And I think another one, around what was particularly worked well was us particularly individually as a group, was I think having a group where everyone respected each other and offered that mutual respect, but also kind of giving people the capacity to talk and listening to them, as well as if someone said something, you feel like you could maybe question that, but knowing that that's not necessarily going to be personal, was a very productive way of working. So yeah, I'd say they were the main takeaways for me.
Cool, thank you, Tom. I'm going to pass over to Fiona.
Thank you, Nessa. Now I'm going to talk about the positive aspects of meeting virtually and how it was very practical. We were able to split tasks more efficiently and more people could attend, because they weren't having to travel or worry about the time they were meant to get somewhere. All they had to do was log on remotely from their laptop. Also, it was really useful to have breakout rooms to ensure that everybody's voice was heard. It was lovely to then come together and collate the ideas that we talked about within the breakout rooms to ensure that what we were talking about was focused and that our research was going in the right direction. I don't feel like we'd have had the same experience meeting all together as a group, because as Nessa mentioned previously, and Tom has mentioned this as well, sometimes when you're part of a group in person, the environment can be quite distracting and noisy, and also it can be quite difficult to get your voice heard in a room full of people. So that's definitely a positive of working on Zoom, as it allows people to contribute individually and for everybody to take time to listen to comments and then give constructive feedback on that.
Fantastic. I'm going to put her on the spot and ask Bev, what about you? What are your thoughts as facilitator about the positives of working in this way?
I don't know if I've got anything to add to what everybody said, to be honest, but I think the richness of what everybody's brought to the project has been a positive, kind of being able to work together. It was, even I didn't know where we were going at the beginning. And some ways I've been surprised in the direction we've taken. Splitting into 2 groups and involving different participant groups is really kind of something I wouldn't have thought about, but actually helped the research be much more useful and relevant and meaningful, and just having everybody to work with as well along the way. I am grateful for how everybody has embraced the project and actually seen it as a positive experience as much as I have. So that's been a real positive. Yeah, it's been great to kind of be able to work together through the challenges, and we are still going. So thank you to co-researchers.
Indeed we are. And from that, I'm actually going to say that that's it from us for now. I'm going to say thank you for listening, and that we will be back with podcast number 4 to talk about what we have actually found out. So we're going to do the cheesy wave, and then we're going to say bye. So, bye.